This is the Soundboks Go. If you're looking for a super rugged portable box speaker that can take a whole lot of abuse and keep up with your constant on-the-go outdoors lifestyle, all while delivering a whole lot of volume in a relatively compact form factor, then the Soundboks Go is for you. The Soundboks Go is literally going to deliver Partybox 310 max volume performance in a more rugged and smaller form factor than the Partybox 110. However, the Soundboks Go is not the best if you plan on using it while indoors. But nonetheless, today we're going to check out the Soundboks Go and see what it's all about. Now, regarding pricing, the Soundboks Go has a retail price of $700. Now, you can also get the additional carrying strap, which retails for $60. It's not a must-have, but it does make life a little easier, especially if you have to hike with the speaker. But for comparison's sake, the Soundboks 3 has a retail price of $1,000. Then there's the Partybox 310 and Sony XP700, which both have a retail price of $550. Then there's the Partybox 110 and Sony XP500, which both have a retail price of $400. And finally, there are the more portable JBL Boombox 2, Sony XG500, which both have a retail price of $500. And finally, there's the Hyperboom, which retails for $450. Now, overall, what I'm trying to say here is the Soundboks Go is a rather niche speaker that I feel people are going to cross-reference with a lot of other different speakers before they decide to pick up the Soundboks Go. Now, in this video, we're mainly going to focus on the Soundboks Go, and I'll more directly compare the Go to these other speakers in the versus videos. But for right now, if you want to pick the Soundboks Go up, it'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch shelf down below. I've made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And if you've been watching me for a while, you know I can be very particular. So I'll only set my name on something that I'm really proud of. Now first, let's talk about the design of the speaker, because this is a main selling point of the Go. Now the Go has a width of 18 inches, a height of 12 inches, and a depth of 10 inches. And it weighs in at 20 pounds. Now yes, it is larger and heavier than your Boombox 2, XG500, and Hyperboom, but it is smaller than your Partybox 110 and Sony XP500, all while delivering Partybox 310 and Sony XP700 performance, and then some. And obviously, the Go is smaller than the Soundboks 3, and it does a decent job of keeping up with its larger brother, but obviously, the Soundboks 3 outperforms the Go. And when it comes to portability, the Go has a built-in carrying handle, and this should be good enough for most people. However, if you want, you can get the optional carrying strap, and this carrying strap really comes in handy if you have to hike with the speaker to get to your campsite or whatever. And I also want to point out, the Go does have a built-in loop strap, so you can always attach some things to the speaker. And finally, I also want to point out that there is a top hat mount on the bottom of this speaker, so you can always use a speaker stand mount if you want with it. But size and portability aside, another main selling point of the Soundboks Go is just its sheer ruggedness. Now, all along its body, the Go has extruded rubber bumpers, so you can just drop the speaker down and not worry about it. And both the cabinet and front grille are made of a very dense plastic that is going to be able to stand up to constant abuse, like let's say throwing the speaker into the back of your pickup truck or camper with all of your camping equipment, or maybe even power tools, because this speaker would be a good option to use at a construction site. And alongside just the sheer toughness of the speaker, the Go is also rocking an IP65 rating, meaning that it's both water and dustproof. However, I would be mindful about not getting any dirt or water into the exhaust ports, which are found around the main woofer under the honeycomb grill. But now let's talk about tech specs. When it comes to battery life, the Go comes included with a removable 99.84 watt-hour battery. Now, this is good for multiple reasons. First of which, having a removable battery means that this is going to extend the life of your investment. Because, for example, with my Soundboks 3, its included battery pack is dead after 3 years. Now, instead of having to throw out the whole speaker or trying to figure out how to change the battery in my Soundboks 3, I can always just easily swap it out and get a new battery. But also, having a removable battery like this one is good because if you have multiple batteries, you can just easily swap them out as your batteries get drained. And this is good either if you're somewhere that's off the grid or, like I mentioned earlier, if you're at a construction site. Now, in order to charge this battery, you can either charge it while it's outside of the speaker, or you can have this battery inside of your speaker and plugged in, and you can continue to use your speaker while it's plugged in. However, if you are going to use your speaker while it's plugged in, you don't want the volume to go past 50% volume, and Soundboks is very adamant about this. Now, I tried using my Soundboks Go past 50% volume while it was plugged in and charging the battery at the same time, and it just started screeching. It literally scared me to death, and I'm never gonna do that again. And also, Soundboks also recommends that you don't use the Soundboks without having a battery pack installed. But now let's talk about actual battery life, because battery life really varies on the speaker depending on how you use it. Now, the Soundboks Go has an advertised battery life of 40 hours, and that's with the speaker playing at 50% volume while in its power EQ. And for comparison's sake, having the Soundboks Go at 50% volume is like having either the Boombox 2 or UE Hyperboom playing at 80% volume. So 50% volume on the Soundboks Go is a really good listening volume, whether you're using it indoors or outdoors. However, if you were to use the Soundboks Go at max volume while in its power EQ, then you are going to have an advertised battery life of 10 hours. And for comparison's sake, if you were to use the Soundboks Go anywhere past 75% volume while indoors, then you are going to need hearing protection. However, if you were to use the Soundboks Go while in its bass plus EQ, which is my preferred EQ setting because you're going to get the most out of this speaker because you're going to get more bass and it is going to get louder, then you are going to have to sacrifice some battery life, and at max volume it should be good for 6 hours of playback time. Or if you were to use the speaker while in its indoors EQ, then your battery life is going to increase, but you are going to have to sacrifice some bass and it's just not going to get as loud. And at max volume is good for up to 14 hours. So overall, if you want to get the most out of the Soundboks Go, I do recommend that you mostly use it while in its bass plus mode, even though that does mean you are going to have to sacrifice some battery life. However, if you want to extend your battery life but still be able to thoroughly enjoy your music, then power is a good EQ setting to use as well. But whether you decide to use bass plus or the power EQ, the Soundboks Go is going to be able to keep up with you without any problems. However, if you demand lots and lots of battery life, then you can always just easily and quickly swap out the batteries. Now, when it comes to ports, unfortunately, the Soundboks Go only has an audio jack. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that the Go has an audio jack, but unfortunately, the Go does not have an audio out jack, so you can't daisy chain it to any other speakers, and it also doesn't have a 1/4 inch input, so you can't plug in a microphone into the speaker like you can with either the 310, 110, or a whole lot of other box speakers out there. And the Go also does not have an XLR input like the Soundboks 3, so you can't connect this big and capable speaker to a mixer. Now, personally, I am rather disappointed about the port setup on the Soundboks Go. Okay, I can let the lack of an XLR port pass, but not having a 1/4 inch or audio out jack is a pretty big deal because these are very standard ports when we look at other box speakers out there. Now, when it comes to Bluetooth connectivity, the Soundboks Go is using Bluetooth 5.0. Now, connectivity-wise, it's fine and latency is not an issue. So if you were to play a video with the speaker, then latency is not going to be an issue. Your video and audio is going to sync up. However, even though the Soundboks Go is using Bluetooth 5.0, it can only be connected to one device at a time and is still only using SBC. And finally, before we talk about sound and speaker setup, I do want to adjust the volume dial on this speaker. Now, in order to turn the speaker on or off, you're going to press and hold on the volume dial, and you can adjust the local volume of this speaker. However, just like with the Soundboks 3, you still can't play or pause your music or skip through your music directly from the speaker itself. You gotta do that either through your phone or whatever media source you're using. But now let's talk about speaker setups. The Soundboks Go has a single frontward firing 10-inch woofer with frontward firing exhaust ports, and it also has a single frontward firing tweeter horn. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I would avoid getting any water or dirt into these exhaust ports, but also, since the Go has frontward firing exhaust ports, from a sound quality standpoint, you're not going to be able to place the speaker up against a wall and amplify its bass like you could with other box speakers out there, whose exhaust ports shoot out the back, or place it in a corner and amplify its bass like you can with the Soundboks 3, whose exhaust ports shoot out the sides. Now, like I mentioned earlier, there are 3 stock EQ settings for the Go. There's power, which gives you a balanced sound signature with good battery life. There's bass plus, and basically, you're going to get the most out of this speaker with this EQ setting, albeit you're going to have to sacrifice some battery life. And finally, there's indoors mode, which reduces the overall bass and max volume of this speaker. But using indoors mode is going to increase your battery life. Now, we're going to jump into the sound test. Now, we're going to be cycling between these 3 EQ modes, and the Go is going to be playing at 75% volume. So, like I have mentioned a few times already, if you want to get the most out of this speaker, you want to use it while in bass plus mode. Power sounds good, but it just doesn't have enough physicality in its bass for my taste. And with indoors mode, there's even less bass and the speaker just doesn't get as loud. However, I feel that it's very important that I stress that this speaker is only worth getting if you plan on using it 90% of the time while outdoors. The Soundboks Go is a very hard speaker to use while indoors. The Soundboks Go really likes to use its tweeter for both the highs and a good amount of the mids. Now, this is good because at higher volumes where the bass on this speaker is really kicking off, you can still very easily hear the lyrics and instrumentals on the speaker. The bass doesn't overpower the rest of your music, and the Soundboks Go continues to sound very balanced at those higher volumes that you can only use while outdoors. However, at lower volumes, since the Go really likes to put its tweeter to work, it can sound rather bright with very little physicality in its bass. Now, you can go in and raise the bass and lower the treble on the Go so that it doesn't sound super bright and so that it has a good amount of physicality in its bass at the lower volumes that you might want to use the speaker at while indoors. But still, even with this adjusted EQ that I made, the bass is still lagging a little bit when compared to other options out there. And since I had to lower the highs on the speaker so much when I'm going to use it indoors, it can sound a little shallow. So, like I said, the speaker is best used while outdoors, so you can let the speaker stretch its legs. And even though the 10-inch woofer on this speaker does put out an impressive amount of bass, the Go does lean more towards a brighter sound signature because that tweeter is working overtime here. But when it comes to max volume, this thing is a little monster. Now, this speaker is going to get the loudest when it's playing with its bass plus EQ. Power EQ is up there as well, but bass plus is a touch louder. And then there's indoor mode, which, like you may have just seen during the sound test, it just doesn't get as loud. And here it is playing at max volume while it's plugged in, which is something Soundboks says that you shouldn't do. But as you can see, you aren't going to get a performance increase like you do with some other speakers out there. Now, in relation to other speakers, the Soundboks Go manages to get slightly louder than your big box speakers like the JBL Partybox 310 or Sony XP700, even while they're plugged in. Because with both of these box speakers, if you were to use them while they're plugged in, you're going to get a performance boost out of them. They're going to get louder and have more bass. Now, even though, yes, the Soundboks Go does manage to get louder than these other two speakers, the Go just doesn't have as much bass as these other two speakers. So the Go does sound much brighter by comparison. But nonetheless, max volume is very impressive for the Go, given its relatively small size. But finally, let's talk about pairing this speaker up to other speakers. Now, with the Soundboks Go, you can pair it up either to another Soundboks Go or to a Soundboks 3, and you can have a total of up to 5 speakers paired together, which personally I think is plenty. This isn't like with party boxes where you can only have 2 party boxes paired up. Now, through the app, you have a good amount of flexibility. You can use any EQ setting that you want, and you can still make your own, and all of the connected speakers will use the same EQ setting as well. But if you want, you can have all of your speakers play in mono mode and all play in sync. Or if you want, you can assign one as the left channel and the other as the right channel. And if you have a third speaker, I assume that you can set it up as a center channel if you want. But the important thing here is that you can mix and match speakers here, and you can assign whatever channel you want to them. You don't have to have 2 of the same speakers to get left and right stereo sound going like you do with a lot of other brands out there. And overall, Soundboks' speaker pairing protocol is fine. It's easy enough to use. You can do everything from the app itself. You have a good amount of customization options to choose from. It always just works, and I never have any syncing issues while the speakers are going. But with all that being said, the Soundboks Go definitely delivers on its promises. But it is a very neat speaker, and I would not blame some people finding it very hard to justify getting the Soundboks Go over some other options out there. but it honestly boils down to your needs. The Soundboks Go definitely delivers on its promise of being a super durable and portable speaker. This thing truly is built like a tank. All of these other speakers that I mentioned in this video are using noticeably softer plastics, which are much easier to scratch up, and they have very thin metal grills, which are very easy to bang up. Whereas the Soundboks Go, it can take anything you throw at it. And sound-wise, the Soundboks Go gets louder than both the Partybox 310 and XP700, even while they're plugged in, while being half their size. However, the Go just doesn't have as much bass as these other two speakers. But like I mentioned earlier, the Soundboks Go is only worth getting if you plan on using it mostly while outdoors. And by mostly outdoors, I mean 90% of the time. Since the Go is really putting its tweeter to work, it can sound very bright and flat at lower volumes. And at higher volumes, even though the Go sounds balanced with a good amount of bass, it still leans towards a brighter sound signature. But nonetheless, you do want to use this speaker while outdoors just so that it has room to stretch its legs. And besides, this speaker is designed to be used outdoors and off-grid. It's got a super long battery life when used at normal listening volumes, and you can quickly swap out its batteries if you've got backups. The only thing that truly is disappointing about the Soundboks Go is its port setup. I really wish the Soundboks Go had at least one XLR input, 1/4 inch input, and an audio out jack, just like its bigger brother. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit the like button and get subscribed. If you want to pick any of the products up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch. I made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And you know I can be very particular, so I'll only slap my name on something if I'm really proud of it.